introduction. Thank you for being with us today. I'm not going to say a whole lot. I'm just going to go right into the introduction. This is Mr. Beven Stein. He works for the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Slovakia as the coordinator of humanitarian aid for Ukraine, among other places. So I'm going to let him talk about the powerful work that he's doing in that area. Thank you and welcome.
All right. I'd like to begin, actually, with reading from Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 to 30. Jesus says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." You know, if we are trying to do something for God, it will burden us down and we will feel overwhelmed. But if we are receiving from Him the grace and the call, the equipping to do a work, it will bring life to our souls. And that's what I can say, the testimony. I feel as though God has shared 3 tears from His eyes to mine over the course of the last 30 years. The first being Slovakia, to encourage missions in that country, to not beyond Slovakia, of course, the international missions. And that's why I chose that country 30 years ago in April. And 4 years ago, almost to the date, the 24th will be the anniversary of the outbreak of the war in Ukraine, at least the latest part of that war. I felt very strongly led to begin doing mission work in Ukraine as well. It was one of those tears that God shed from His eyes to mine. You know, one day He will wipe away our tears, but right now He gives us the opportunity to wipe some of His tears. And so I look at it as ministry unto the Lord Himself when I do this. And I'm so thankful that the church in Slovakia asked me to be their national coordinator for humanitarian aid, because I had already committed to do it with or without support from the church. It was something that I felt God called me to do. And I got a commercial truck driver's license and bought a big truck. And I partnered with another Ukrainian truck driver so that together we could carry 34 tons. And we, every 2 to 3 weeks, made another trip to Ukraine. And I believe that that Jesus has exchanged burdens with us, right? In this, take my yoke upon you and learn of me. Take this yoke that He has given to us, brings life to our souls when we are bearing His burdens as He has borne our burden of sin. So that is a motive for what I do. Besides, obviously, the human compassion for those who suffer. I think anybody who has a beating heart should have some compassion for their fellow man who is suffering. But there is a spiritual motive that goes beyond just our human compassion, or at least for me personally. And so what I'm about to share with you, I hope you will see some of the reasons why God's heart is broken. Okay? It's going to be a little hard to see some of it. Now, I have intentionally not, I've chosen to eliminate most of the slides that are very hard to see, because I'm never sure what kind of audience I will have, and there may be children present. I'm glad to see they're not this time. But there are sometimes slides that I feel like are a little too hard for children to see. I have not eliminated all of them. There's a couple that are still in there. So if that is difficult for you, then you might want to close your eyes for that moment. And I will not dwell on those. But I do think that sometimes we need to see the reality of what people are going through there on a daily basis. Just a little bit of the news that you're not getting from your news sources, okay, before I begin. Since the beginning of that war, Russia has been using chemical weapons along the front lines. You've not heard that. I don't believe. You remember that Russia did this in Syria, right? Back in so many years ago. They are doing it again in Russia and have been since the beginning of the war. They have also begun using spent uranium rods from the hydroelectric energy plants that heat water, you know, the hydroatomic, they use those spent rods to create what's called dirty bombs. They are uranium-laced missiles that cause they don't cause a mushroom cloud that goes up in the upper atmosphere, because the jet stream moves eastward towards Russia, and they don't want that. So they instead use what's called a dirty bomb, and it causes radiation to poison the ground, so that the crops and fruit trees and things that the Ukrainians are eating is poisoned and causes cancer and tumors. Almost every single person that I meet in Ukraine, along the front lines especially, has cancer from this. So you're not going to get that news on CNN or wherever you're watching your news source, but it's true. And so it's a lot worse than the pictures that I'm going to show you, but to save, I don't want to overwhelm you. So the things that I'm going to show you are not the worst that I'm seeing there, but that is enough that hopefully you will be able to get a picture. So within 3 days, I had already gotten the first load of supplies together that I took to first Western Ukraine. I had no contacts over there when I began, and so I needed to start by finding partners. And so little by little, I expanded westward to Kiev, and then expanded eastward to Kiev, and then further east to Kharkiv, Odessa, and all the front lines. Okay, so then that's where I've taken now. You may not be able to see that very well if you're at an angle, but these black dots show where many of the drop points are that I take my supplies to. They don't show all of them because I've taken several up to Kiev and to the north. The blue area that you see is not water. That's where the Ukrainians, soldiers, have pushed the Russian army back out of Ukraine and recaptured their own territory. So a lot of the times I go into that formerly occupied area. I wish I had shown more of the places I go in the north part around of Kiev. But I've taken over 200 tons of food just to the north side of Kiev. So hundreds of thousands, I lost track of how many tons, because when I got over here to Kharkiv and I found a church that was warehousing food that had been supplied by other international aid organizations, and was full because they didn't have fuel to deliver the humanitarian aid all along these front lines. I stayed with them until I distributed all of the aid that had been warehoused in their church, and the rooms like this were stacked, right? And so besides my own aid that I had taken, I stayed to deliver all of that warehoused aid as well, and I didn't take credit for that, and I stopped taking credit after I saw how many places. Also in Kiev, there's many warehouses full of aid with no one to deliver it because there's no fuel to deliver it further. And so I used my truck to help do that. I bought my own truck so that I could take the risks that I felt like I wanted to take, because trucking companies that are licensed in the European Union, the insurance does not permit them to go into the war zone, that is across the border into Ukraine. All of Ukraine is the war zone. And so all of the trucking companies stop and drop off their aid at the border, and then somebody has to take it the rest of the way. And so that's, in a way, how I ended up becoming not just working for the Lutheran Church, but for any aid organization that wanted my help to deliver it the rest of the way. And it was just overwhelming how much people were outpouring and trying to help, but it wasn't getting to the final place where the people needed the most. And so that's where I began to help the most. And so as you can see, I try to go as far as possible, clear across Ukraine to deliver the aid where it's most needed. This is my truck. And the next picture shows the full-size 18-wheeler that we go to ride together. That's how we can carry 34 tons together. This is the Lutheran Church in Kiev, you should say, not Kiev, Kiev. And I'm standing there. It's a beautiful church. This is the bishop, the general bishop of Ukraine, who I know personally. And some of the boxes, I started organizing what I called boxes of blessings, boxes of 50 pounds of food that I organized through the Slovak Lutheran Church. There's many hundreds of congregations. Not all have have a church. They meet in various different locations, but there's several hundred beautiful church buildings and hundreds more like congregations like this that might meet in a administration building or something. And we organize about 1,000 congregations in all to put these boxes together. And I invite families to, I give them an item list of everything that's supposed to go in that box. And you can see they're all identical boxes. They can't vary an iota one from another because I have to go through the customs office and declare everything that's going through. So I provide an item list. The bishop propagates that by email to all of the pastors in the country, and then they invite their members to put one of these boxes together. And then I, on an agreed upon date, go around and collect them all, anywhere from 400 to 900 boxes in one trip, depending upon how many people say they want to help. And so it costs about $100 per box, a little over $100, $120. It varies from one trip to the next. And this box is designed to help a small family of usually one grandma or grandma and a child. Most of the men are not present. They're at the front lines of fighting. You don't see very many young men in Ukraine. They're at the front lines. So, but we want to try and help one small family survive for 1 month for one box. And so we think about what it would take to provide a family food for 1 month. So that's what you're seeing there. And whenever I show up at a church in Ukraine, they always ask me to preach, usually to refugees that have internally displaced persons that come to one of these churches that has warehouse supplies, and they are looking, for aid day after day after day, while the majority of the people are not getting any, right? So I'm not against these folks getting the help that they need, but they're kind of the lucky ones because they were able to get away from the front lines. But there's a lot of people left behind who couldn't get away. So I am preaching through a translator. Every time I arrive someplace with this aid, I'm immediately asked to preach. So this is one of the reasons why I use what's called an 18-ton truck, along with a full-size 18-wheeler, because the roads, and when you get further east, are often impassable for 18-wheelers. They get hung up. It's too rough. And the bridges sometimes are blown out, and they are pontoon-type bridges, and an 18-wheeler can't cross over. So with my truck, we can park an 18-wheeler somewhat safe distance away, and then I can make trips with my truck, unload it, come back, unload it, and come back. And when I get too far where I can't even go any further, then we use vans. And it's the vans that help us get it to the actual homes or bombed out places, the worst, because even my truck can't go everywhere.
And your friends.
All right, so some of these are videos. But anyway, this is an example of the kind of bridges that we had to go across. Buildings like this I see an awful lot of, especially on the eastern side of Ukraine. This was actually an elementary school that almost got bombed, or just a near miss, and now the soldiers are in there in the basement using it. It was right on the front lines, and I went into the basement. You have to crawl through a broken window and get down into the basement, and that's where I could pray with the soldiers before they went into battle. And then when they came back out of battle and were wounded, had shrapnel or something, and they're going to have to be their leg amputated or something without anesthesia, because these are field hospitals. I'm not showing the bodies, I'm showing you where they were laying on these cots, right? And I prayed for them before they went into surgery, and believe me, they didn't care if I was an Orthodox priest at that point. They were just glad to have somebody praying for them. And this was where they were operated on, in that hospital room right there. There's not a lot. They just set up a table in there and start operating. I found a lady, I should say my team, I was with the team when we came upon this lady who was in the 5th floor on this 8th-floor building. A missile hit it on the 3rd floor and blew the floors out, up and down. She came sliding down in all that debris, and we pulled her out. Before I got there, some other people pulled her out, and we came and ministered to her. But you could still smell the smoke and she was crying and everything, so we were obviously praying for her. And we gave her a Bible in the Ukrainian language, and she hugged it to her chest. She put the food down that we'd given her, and she hugged the Bible. And she said, "This is the first time I've ever held a Bible in my own hands." And she said, "I feel like God has forsaken us and forgotten about us." And I said, "Well, I'm sure he hasn't, because if we haven't, God hasn't, and we came to find you. And if I can find you, God has found you also. And he is staying with you, even when we leave." And I stayed and prayed with her. I always lay my hands on them and pray for them individually. I use a translator, so I get to hear their story a little bit. And her name, by the way, is Nadia. And in Ukrainian language, that means hope. And I felt like that was ironic that we had brought hope to hope. So I'm going to show you some pictures of places where we pull people out, where we rescue people out of these locations and evacuate them to hospitals where they can get treatment in Kiev for their injuries, and then we take them to one of 3 different evacuation centers that I've been helping to renovate and supply with food and medicine. So these are homes where we found people still alive along the front lines. And by the way, these are behind the police line. There are many civilians that want to try and get back to their homes. They've been living somewhere, displaced persons in Western Ukraine, and they want to get back and see if their home is still intact, especially after Ukrainians were pushing Russians back out of a territory, and their home was supposed to be in Ukrainian hands again. They want to go back home, but the police won't allow them because it's not been demined, right? And so if you know what like an Ajax toy is, if you've ever stepped on one, you know it. That's about the size of a little bomblet that Russian troops scatter, gazillions of them, in a territory as they're being shoved out, bombed and pushed out by the Ukrainian army. The last thing they do is make sure they just scatter many little bomblets like this that are just big enough to blow people's feet off, but not big enough to kill them. So they're designed to maim, and they're in the grass where you can't find them, right? And they're just along the sidewalk, whatever. They're just so small you don't notice them. So many people that somehow get past the police line get badly injured, maimed in their feet. And so the police are always trying to stop people from going back to their homes. And so to take aid in there and try to find people who are still alive in these places, we have to have special help from the military, who's going to escort us with a military escort, because they know where the mining, the demining tanks have gone and where it's relatively safer to go. And we're not allowed to get out of our truck or venture out even a little bit out of the lane where they take us. So this is the reason why you see buildings like this, that we have been able to find people still alive in some cases. This is one of the places that I took aid to, 11 times, because they were taking care of 8,000 refugees. People had come through this place and either on their way westward or just to live there for a time. Anyway, because we were taking aid there, it was hit. It was intentionally targeted. I think they were targeting me, but they hit the hotel where I was staying. Okay, and they missed me because I had just left. This is a warehouse that I also took aid to. This is it got hit shortly after I was there. This is me delivering some supplies there at that warehouse. That man was a part of our team. He died in the attack that happened right after I was there. It's that warehouse before it was hit. That's after.
Wow.
He got killed in that attack. So I believe that I'm being tracked as I come across Ukraine. There are different ways that they can keep track of humanitarian aid vehicles like mine. At the customs office, we're pretty sure that there's a mole. If you know what a mole is, somebody that is undercover providing information to Russia about the vehicles, military and humanitarian aid that are coming through, because they can see the inventory list. They know exactly what's in there. They also can see where you're going with it, because you have to declare that. You can't just take it in Ukraine and start handing it out. You have to have a partner in Ukraine that has permission from the government to receive humanitarian aid, and they have to return a report, and so everything is very controlled. So when you turn in your paperwork, they know exactly what's there and where it's going and when. They even have the names and contact information for the person there. So we think that there's probably a mole working in the office, probably a displaced person that got out of the occupied area, but has family still back there that are being used to blackmail, to hold somebody, to say, if you don't provide us with information, then your family won't survive. Something like that. There are other ways they can also track us across the country, but the Russians have ways. So this is that warehouse. I think I showed that picture already. This is a town that I took aid to. After I came back, my partner that I worked with the most over there, he went back over there to take more pictures for me and sent this picture to me. It got hit harder after we had left. This is a place where we found somebody still alive and were able to evacuate them. These are the missiles that Russia is sending thousands across Ukraine, from 100 to 500 every single day. Every day, between 100 to 500 missiles. And they leave behind these casings, piles of them. There's several different piles. I have pictures of different piles of these. So this is where Ukrainian soldiers had pushed the Russians back, and my partner, Volodymyr, went in there to try and find people and took a picture of these missiles. But the quantum of missiles that Russia is firing into Ukraine every day staggers the imagination. There are, in addition, 80,000 mortar rounds that the Russians are firing every day. And those are not guided. They just, they'll have a short range and they just hit whatever, right? Those 80,000 a day along the front lines, and 1 to 500 of these every day. Okay, so while we're not hearing anything about it in the news here in America, the war is continuing unabated and increasing. Russia has a stronger economy today than it had at the beginning of the war, in spite of the sanctions, because they're selling so much oil to China. Right? China is supporting them economically. And they are producing estimated three times as much new ammunition like this every month than what NATO is able to keep up with. All the countries of NATO are not producing 1/3 what Russia is producing every month. So they're not depleting their stocks; they're replenishing them. This is one of the craters, size of the bombs that blew up, missed a target and hit a field. The Ukrainians, they take out these tanks and then bring them into town, kind of like museum pieces or something for people to see in the city. This is a town called Sumy. It's up by the Russian border where I took humanitarian aid. Another place where we found a person. These are all places where I've taken aid or found people that we evacuated out. These are the boxes that I took in one of the early trips. Those are my boxes in that location. This, I don't know if anyone can read Russian, that says, "Do not enter." Right? Anyone read Russian? No? It says, "Do not enter." You didn't need to put it on the wall. I was thinking, why? The hole in the building wasn't enough of a warning. But it's because there's bombs that it's not been demined yet. The interesting thing about many buildings, I'm going to show one or two like this, you see that somebody was standing on the road, or a Russian soldier was standing on the road and saw somebody in that window and used a shoulder-mounted grenade launcher to launch a grenade into that building right targeted at that person. That's why it went through the window. Blew the roof off. It was a powerful explosion. It blew the roof off. They target people, civilians. It's not accidental. That was that building right next to it. Another place we found a person. You can't see it, and I don't think I can expand it. Those are spoiled potatoes that the person was eating. Black. Spoiled potatoes. Anyway, they live hard. They've lived a hard life. This woman was freezing to death in this building in the winter, and we found her almost frozen by the time we rescued her out of there. These are, I snapped that picture when I was, I forget what town I was in, but all the blown out cars are just piled up. And every one of those cars represents civilians that were in it when the Russians attacked them. Okay, so the next picture is a little more graphic, so be careful if it's, this is a man who didn't get taken out, who didn't make it. All right, next one is going to be also difficult. This lady, we found her, she had bad gangrene, you know. A woman that we rescued out, she wasn't getting out of her house by herself. She wasn't getting out by herself. She was left behind. When everybody else fled for their lives, she wasn't getting out on her own without help. And a man the same way. We have 200 people, almost, just under 200 people that we have evacuated out. And the primary source of funding for their daily survival, food, medicine, healthcare, everything that they need. In 3 evacuation centers that I've helped, 2 of which I've helped renovate. One was already renovated before I got started. So these are people living in their cellars. We took food to them because they were hiding in their shelter. They were not afraid to come out and get aid. Most of the time, humanitarian aid is delivered in semi-trucks and to a town square or someplace, and people have to come out and get it. Well, they get shot or killed by a rocket, so we don't do that. We take it into them, wherever they are, right? Up to the 9th floor or down in the basement or wherever they are. That's where we go with the aid and help them. This little girl, her feet were blown off. This man, his feet were blown off. Those boxes are boxes of blessings from the Lutheran Church in Slovakia. I don't know why this man was not clothed when we arrived, but anyway, that is another family that we took aid to. You see old men and children, but you don't see very many young men fighting age. This is one of the few I've seen his age there. And he has 2 children, so he must have been given an exemption or something to help his children. This was a hospital that now is blown up. It's gone. It's in a town called Krematorsk. But at the time that we were there, it was still operating, and this was a cancer ward for children. And it was the first food that they had received in 2 years that wasn't contaminated food from radiation poisoning. They were feeding children who had cancer, poisoned, radiated food. So they were very happy when we brought them good food from Slovakia. This is the first of the 3 evacuation centers that I began helping. That means house of prayer. It is a church that had a vision to create around it, buy these village homes around it, and begin taking people from the war zone, especially disabled or handicapped, disabled or injured. And so some of those that could help carry boxes, I unloaded all these boxes and they came out to help me to deliver them. This is one of my buddies. This man was a policeman, and he lost his mind because of the things that he witnessed in that country. And that's part of the trauma, part of the damage that is happening. The entire country's got PTSD, the entire country, because people can't get away from it. They never know when their next rocket is going to hit them. And that constant fear for 4 years, day and night, is taking its toll on people, right? And this was one of them he is now an invalid for mental problems because he's seen too much. This is a town called Poponia. I knew I'd get it. Poponia. And it is a town where I've taken lots of aid. And then warehoused it in, by the way, it's in the center of Ukraine, and where we have now 2 evacuation centers that we've renovated. One of them we had to buy, and there was a gala that was held here November 9th, and maybe you heard about it. It was 16 churches, Lutheran churches, that Pastor Chris Franz from Westchester, I think, held a fundraising gala for my ministry and raised $20,000 from my ministry and $10,000 for the Palestinians in Gaza. And they didn't show up. The Muslim cleric didn't show up. They asked me if I would speak for their cause as well. And even though I'd never been there, I still raised $10,000 just for that. Okay, so $20,000 for the one where I work and $10,000 for the Palestinians. So, and one of the Muslim ladies came up to me and said, I want to know how I can support your ministry. So I've got my first Muslim supporter now. That's interesting, exciting to me. Anyway, so this is a place where we have 2 evacuation centers that we take care of people at. I've got just a short time here. This is one of those 2, and I provided all the money for the repairs of the building, appliances, food, beds, everything. It's an open floor layout, but this is a husband and wife. She's blind, and they were some of those that we evacuated and got them to safety. It is in a relatively safe area of Ukraine, long way from any town, from any city. So I'm going to go kind of quickly to show, here I'm preaching here. I'm always asked to preach to Ukraine. This is a items list of things I needed to go buy. That's what was on that list. This is the 3rd location, and this is the one that the money went to purchase and renovate. That the fundraising gala was to help me to provide for this place. So you can see the man here doesn't have any feet, but he's helping wash another man. He helps change their diapers. He lives there, but he also helps there. So a few, pretty tough. All of the people we help are like this. All of them are in serious need of help. So the check that you guys collected for this work is going to be helping these people. These very people. Not people just like them. These very people. Okay? Kherson is the hardest hit city that is still, I can still get into. This lady's house was flooded and then bombed twice, hit with rockets twice. So and this lady, a rocket hit her house and went through the roof into the floor. I saw the hole. The army came and took it out, took the missile out, but they wouldn't be alive today if it had gone off. Fortunately, it was a dud. But we took food to them. This couple lived, I don't know how many months in a cellar underneath the kitchen floor, hiding while Russians were running all around their town. In that very place, that's where they were hiding for months. So many stories. Each one of these pictures, I could tell you lots of stories because I listened to their story and then I pray for them. This was that man's, what was left of his car, his bicycle, and his roof. He's an Orthodox priest. And the only man who prayed for me of all the people I prayed for in Ukraine. This was a house just around the corner from that Orthodox priest, and you can see the same thing happened. There was somebody in those windows, somebody fired a shoulder grenade at them to kill them, killed them. This woman's home, there's nothing left of it, not even the walls. A rocket hit very close to me, much like this one. This was very much the same side, and a building just like that protected us. I was on the other side of the building, and it protected us. So I showed this to show you what it was like that came so close to hitting us. A drone spotted us, and then they sent a rocket to the coordinates, and we had moved since the drone had spotted us, and we didn't get hit. 95-year-old lady on the 5th floor. The elevator doesn't work, so we took food up to her. Oh man, I'd love to tell you each one of these stories of people that were helping. This lady never stopped crying from the moment we walked into her apartment, giving her food. So thankful that the world has not forgotten about her. And I'm trying to remind the world not to forget about Ukraine and stop praying for them. This man has gangrene on his nose and has soiled himself. And it was the hardest place actually for me not to lose my stomach. I don't eat before I go deliver aid because I wouldn't keep it down. A lady who is dying of cancer. There's no working hospitals in Kherson, so people just die in their beds. This lady got hit by her home got hit by 2 rockets, one after another, a few minutes apart. She was in the adjacent room. She handed me shrapnel from the floor and said, take this back with you to Slovakia and show the people what hit my house. So I do that. That's the lady right there. That's her handing me the shrapnel. It's a church that I help, and they can no longer use their building because it's been hit by so many rockets that they are hiding in their basements now. I was asked to preach here as well, and they said there was the first church, the first person to bring in humanitarian aid in 2 years to their church. In 2 years. And I was the first person ever from Slovakia. So these children are using a bus stop for their home because their own home is destroyed. I keep records of all the people that I take humanitarian aid to, so that nobody can accuse me that I'm delivering this aid on the black market and getting rich off of it. There's been 1 or 2, rascals out there that have accused me of that, so now we take records of every single person that receives the aid. The telephone number, the address, their birth date, you name it. This is the Slovak ambassador to Ukraine who called me to his office to give me an award for all the food that I've taken to Ukraine. I've gotten awards from villages like this. I'm standing here to receive an award, this award. Here's another award. This is my main partner, Volodymyr, and his wife, Katya. She used to work for USA, but she's out of a job now. Right? So, anyway, and they're saying thank you. Anyway, thank you very much. My time is up. Remember to pray for me because I work just as hard there in Slovakia and Ukraine and Uganda as I work here in America. I drove 1,000 miles to come here because I would do anything to help these people.